So kia ora, Suzanne. It's lovely to have you here with me today on the Resilient Kids podcast, episode 5, and looking forward to talking with you about something that you've been thinking about in relation to your children. So would you like to briefly introduce yourself and then tell us what your topic is?
Kia ora, Madeleine, and kia ora koutou katoa. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. A little bit about myself. So I'm mum, a partner, a daughter, part of a much larger whānau. My whānau from the Eastern Bay of Plenty and the East Coast, Te Pakatohi and Ngāti Porou. So big family, big whānau. I'm a teacher and have worked in lots of different places and taken on lots of different roles. I guess the most important job for me is raising my 2 children. So they are 9 and 7. And really excited to join you today. So thanks so much for having me.
That's my pleasure, absolutely. So what are you thinking that we'd like to talk about today? So
my topic, the thing that I really like to get some insight into is perfectionism. So just particularly with my older child, just that pressure that they tend to put on themselves to do everything right, to come first, to avoid mistakes at all costs.
So what do you, I imagine that you've done a bit of research and reading and thinking about this, being a teacher, but also, being a mother of a perfectionist. What do you already know about it?
So I know that this is common. Perhaps more common in eldest children. Being one of those myself, I know that, in my childhood and probably in my adulthood, I've always put a lot of pressure on myself to do things really well as I can. But of course, we learn the most from our mistakes. And as a teacher, I know that if we're not willing to make those mistakes, to take what I talk to the students about, taking academic risks, like if we don't try something that might not work, then we're not going to grow, we're not going to learn, we're not going to develop. So those are the things that I guess I kind of know about the topic, and very sort of personal for me in terms of my growing up, but also having my own children.
And so when you're thinking about this, what are the issues that come up that you are facing as a mum?
So I guess, there's always a positive and a negative side. So in terms of the positive, I have, 2 children who are very self-motivated. They have high expectations for themselves. They like to get involved with things. But I guess the side that concerns me is where they are pushing themselves to a point where, if something doesn't quite go their way, they feel very disappointed, or they feel very upset, or just putting a lot of pressure on themselves to either be the best or get a place in the race, or just that pressure.
So where do you think the pressure comes from?
I have worked really hard to try and instill in the kids that we take part in things because we want to give it a go, we want to have fun, that it's not about winning or being the best or getting the certificates. So I've worked really hard there, but I'm just wondering, is there some way in which I have subconsciously conveyed this idea that we have to always do our best?
So there may be something in that or not. But I'm also wondering about a big picture. What's happening in our kids' world now that is making them compare themselves with others, that's making them think that they're not good enough? What else is going on, do you think?
I guess in the school context, there's still a lot of emphasis on, getting the certificates and getting up on stage and receiving that praise. Although I think, my children's school, they do a great job of celebrating the things that everyone has to offer. My children don't do a lot online in terms of social media, so I don't feel that they are necessarily comparing themselves to others. I couldn't say if, like, within the classroom there's a lot of competition. I don't know that I necessarily see that. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm sort of a little bit of at a loss.
Yeah, so I wonder how you could find out where they feel the pressure's coming from.
Yeah, that's a really good question to ask, right? So I guess I probably am always looking in here inside myself for the answer. What am I doing? I guess I'm not looking at that wider picture. I hadn't really sort of considered that wider picture. I'd always kind of thought it must be something that I'm doing.
Well, you're a mum, and we do have that tendency to make it about, the things that we can do. But as our children are growing into the world, we know, especially pre-adolescents and adolescents, they get most of their affirmation from their peer group, right?
Yeah.
And so, if that's starting to happen earlier and earlier in our children's lives, what's occurring that's making them feel pressure?
Something that has just, as you say that has just kind of occurred to me. 2.5 years ago, we completely uprooted our life and moved to a new city and a new school. So I wonder if there's a bit of pressure there to, coming into a new environment with new friends, fellow students, new teachers. I wonder if there has been a little bit of a pressure to do really well, because, we're here and we've got to show that we can do our very best and that we are at things. Just on reflection, I wonder if there's a bit of
something
that
in there.
Because I can't say that I've necessarily heard that talk about competition and that kind of thing, but I guess it must be there.
So there's something also often about a psychological pressure that we don't really talk about, this kind of ulterior communication that happens between human beings that we don't name or talk about. And often that's what the thing is that drives us or drives our children to develop in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing is to really listen to, which I'm sure that you do, to what they're saying about who they are.
Yeah.
Because what they're developing is their story about their lives and the person that they are. So when we're thinking about being perfect, it's often I'm not good enough until.
Yes.
So therefore, how can we reinforce and support our children to know that they're good enough, they are enough, they have enough, they just for being who they beautifully are.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like that's a message that we've always tried to, to instill, that their value and worth isn't dependent on our praise, but the language we use, if, kids have found success at something, is we always say, you must be really proud of yourself, you must be proud of the work that you've put in. We try and make it not about how proud we are, because I am aware that you can build that sort of well, I need to do this to please my parents, and I need to do this because I want to please other people.
So it might be interesting to understand a bit more about that. Who are they doing this for?
Yeah.
And if they're not able to be absolutely perfect, what does that mean? And is that true?
Yeah.
So there's a tool by a guy called Daniel Amen, who talks about having ants in our head, automatic negative thoughts.
Yes.
And there's an article on my website, you can download that. But what it does is it helps us to understand those automatic thoughts that we're not even really aware that we do. And he says it's like an infestation, right? They just come in, and who wants ants in your head, really? So he says there's 4 questions. So is it true? So is it true that I'm not good enough if I get a full stop wrong? And then he says, because our feelings trick us, is it absolutely true? Where's the evidence?
Right.
I like that.
Yes.
That suits my sense of humour. The third question is, when I believe that thought, which is really interesting because actually that's what it is. It's just a belief about you. How do I feel and behave?
Yeah.
Then the fourth question is, when I don't believe that thought in my rational present moment, how do I feel and behave? And I've added a 5th question to it, which is, so now what? Now that we're aware of this, how do I want to be?
Yes. That's a great last question for so many things, because I think often we're having conversations around our thought patterns, how we're thinking about a situation, how we're thinking that other people are thinking. So I've had this conversation with one of my children. So again, trying to achieve a level of perfection, or trying to get something good enough.
Yes.
Then the comment was made, oh, but my teacher's going to just think that this is like complete rubbish. So we went through a process of trying to put ourselves in our teacher's shoes. So what do we know about your teacher? Oh, she's really nice, she's really helpful, she's really caring. And so, okay, if you were in her shoes and she was looking at this work, what thing might she say to you? And then my child was able to say, oh, actually, she'd probably say that I've actually tried really hard at this. And they were able to verbalize, those things that the teacher might say. But at the end of that process, so a question like, so what now, would have been really useful, because we kind of got to that point where my child was able to see that they had been very hard on themselves, that what they had done, their teacher would probably see their hard work and that it would be good enough. But so now what question would have been a good next step? And all of
so you can have that one.
Really good. Yeah.
So the other tool that I sometimes use is, I've got a couple of monkeys that I use in my workshops, and I get kids to pretend that we've got a friend monkey and a mean monkey. And when I'm, being the perfection part of, is getting the monkey to say what it is, and then getting the friend monkey to talk to you. And so then you can actually say, so if actually that was a real person, how long would you want them in your life? Because we're the only person that's going to walk through our whole life with us.
Yeah.
And we have a choice about whether we're going to be a mean friend or a kind friend and a supportive friend. So getting, and so again, it's another tool to help kids to more concretize these idea of observing our thinking and understanding what we're actually saying to ourselves.
Yeah, so taking outside of themselves so that they can sort of really see what's happening.
Yes.
Ants in the head.
Yes.
And that's a tool for...
And actually having a physical, animal, or, you can get the kids to choose their kind toy and their mean toy.
Yeah.
and then they can act it out almost.
Yeah, useful. Yeah.
And
Hey,
then, sorry, you go.
no, I was just going to share with you another a story. So something that,
Lovely.
I don't know if this is a good time to share it.
Please do.
So the situation was, it was school cross country. There was a bit of talk about, taking part in the cross country and trying to do their best. And I'm very much, like, we're just going to go and have some fun. And, if you get to the end and you've got a place, well, that would be a bonus, So really trying my very best to, not make it some big competition that had to be won. And so one of the children came home and hadn't placed in the, I don't know, top 10 or something, that we're going to go on to the next big event. And they were very upset, not because they hadn't placed in the top 10. I think, had come like 15th or something. Which we all thought, wow, you finished the race, you ran the whole way. It was really fantastic. It wasn't the not finishing in the top 10, because we tried to do talking about what was going on in our heads and, why we were feeling upset. And the upset was this: I should have trained. I should have done some more training than what we did at school, so that I could have achieved this thing, which was being in the top 10. Right. And I just was sort of like a little bit blindsided, because I really didn't know, like, wow, you're thinking you're putting pressure on yourself. You should have trained, like,
right.
You like running every day, and like, where did this idea of I should have trained, I should have been training harder, I should have done all this stuff to achieve this thing. And I did actually find myself a little bit lost there.
Right. So the first thing is that this child has got a really good strategic mind, because if they want to get to a different outcome, they have got some planning and they've done it. So that's just fantastic, isn't it? That you've got a child who actually can see, I don't like that result, and there is something that I can do about it, which really shows that there's optimism there, because they have potency over their behavior. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, is that your goal? Do you want to spend your time doing this so that you can, become a Olympic runner, or whatever it is? Is that what you want in your life? And the next question is, what, in terms of prioritization, where do they want to spend their time? Because in fact, if they do want to become an Olympic runner, absolutely do the training. But actually, if this is just a sport that they're participating in, and it doesn't matter whether they come 10th, 11th, 15th, or 120th, in the scheme of things. And so I suppose that's the question, is to go back and say, so, is your goal to become a regional runner? Is that what you want to do? Because you might be thinking about, how you want your life to be, or to, that if you don't get in the top whatever, you're not going to be chosen for the rugby team, or, because sometimes these things have connection.
Yeah.
So to understand the motivation again behind why they wanted to become in the top 10.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing which I quite like this idea, is first is always worst.
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah, so whenever we try something, it's the first time we've ever done it. And so therefore we're never, ever, ever going to know what we now know that we've learned from having done that exercise. So therefore, the first time we do something will probably be the worst time we'll ever do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then because we learn things from it, we're going to improve and get better, should we choose to.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? Should we choose to?
Yes.
There's also a child who likes to be involved in lots of things.
Yes.
So it's not just the pressure to do really well at one particular thing. It's, I guess, maybe just an age where there's lots of different opportunities at school, lots of different sport and cultural opportunities and groups to join, and we have a child who just wants to be involved in everything and also
yeah, so
well at everything.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. And one of the things that we're now having an opportunity to talk about is boundaries, and the limit that we have around our energy, around our money, around our time, and what's reasonable. And the way we know what's reasonable is we go back to our family values. And to understand that. So it's fine to want to do 125,000 things. I've often said I'd love to have like 3 wives. That would be really helpful, because then I could do all these other things, other people helping me to do that stuff. But actually, I've only got one life. I've only got one body. And therefore, I have to, whether or not I'm the wealthiest person in the world, I still have to be able to prioritize my time and energy.
And that was really useful, actually. I think you've got an example of that in your book, The Parenting Road Code, around boundaries in terms of time, because I think I've felt this pressure as a parent to have your child involved in so many different things. Are they doing dance? Are they taking music lessons? Are they, involved in this sports team? Are they doing this and doing that? And there's pressure, I feel, as a parent to be making sure that your child is out there doing all these things. And it can be expensive, and in terms of time, it can be, it can get pretty exhausting. And it's just when you're a family, it's just not practical to be involved in every single thing. But I know that I feel that pressure as a parent, because other parents are like, oh, are they playing this? Are they doing this? Oh, they're not in that team.
And you can hear that little ulterior message, eh?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so therefore being able to, as a family, going, our family play one sport a season, our family learn a skill, whatever, I don't know, whatever the boundary is that you decide, so that when you have that pressure from other, you can go back and you've got some language and words to be able to still stand tall and say, for our family, these are the decisions we've made.
Yeah. And as you say, just going back to those values, what are important to us as a family, what's important for us as a family unit. This is not just one person who wants to do all of these things, that impacts on everyone. So having those boundaries and having that language is useful.
And when you think about that, like as a teacher, and parents are coming in and saying, I want my kids to learn this and this and this and this and this, and within the maths class, what would you be saying?
I definitely have this happen, when we have parents' evening, it's just sort of parents come and it's like, they need this and this and this and this, and I'm sure that the students feeling overwhelmed, and sometimes I'm sitting on the other side of the table and I'm thinking, whoa, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. My advice is always to pick a couple of key areas where they have interest, or they have articulated that they want to improve in this particular area. And I would always say, let's focus on those, and then things will probably come along with that. And
so now you're doing the same kind of thing, understanding prioritization, and actually you've got your curriculum too that helps you to create the boundaries. So the things within the curriculum that the kids need to learn within this particular part of the year, and those other things will come later, and we're setting a limit.
That's right. Yeah.
And so you've got the the strategies that you use as a teacher. And so we can pull those good things into your role as a mum.
Yeah, those skills, like you say, what are your, and it's been quite good just reflecting over the last week, what are our strengths? What are the strengths that we have that, we can utilize. And
nice.
And you're so right, like sometimes, I guess I sometimes feel that pressure, like, I'm a teacher, I should be good at parenting, but I have realized that teaching and parenting, there's an overlap, but they are also very different.
Yes, they are very, very different. Yes.
So drawing on the strengths of both. I think being a parent has, I've been able to draw on the strengths I've developed as a parent and become a better teacher.
Nice. So what do you think you're taking away from our short conversation today?
Just the boundaries, obviously that's really clear. And it can feel, I know when you're trying to implement or uphold those boundaries, when there are those pressures like social pressures, or even pressures within the family unit from one of the family members because they want to do lots of different things. Just having those boundaries, those expectations, having the language, well, in our family, this is what we do. In terms of managing sort of my individual children and their sort of expectations of themselves, just using these conversations and these probing questions about where they want to put their focus and where interest, and that will help with the boundaries, because I think they will realize, well, actually, I don't really want to do everything. These are the things I'd quite like to focus on. And then when it comes to, those individual hurdles of, I really wanted to do well at this, or I'm going to come top at this, or whatever, just having, those conversations about what's going on in the head. So trying to externalize some of what's going on the inside and using your monkeys be really useful. And then also those questions about the ants in the head. So if we're upset because something hasn't gone how we wanted it to go, which is usually, I wanted to achieve this particular thing. And then I've got this lots of negative self-talk. Yeah, is it true? Is it absolutely true? I think that's really important. When I believe that thought, how does it feel? That's really powerful. And when I don't believe that thought, how do I feel? I can see how powerful that will be. And then, as I said, the so now what? Because I think as a family, we're quite good at having parts of these conversations, but taking that learning forward. So now what? So yeah, how does this keep us on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds lovely. Thank you. And I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for the tools just in this short amount of time, giving me so much to think about and some real concrete tools that I can, I'm already replaying in my head some of the conversations that I've had with children and also, with my partner, and, just sort of, if I had these questions and these kind of tools, how might those conversations have otherwise played out? So thanks. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. And thank you so much for spending this time talking with us about managing perfectionism. I really appreciate you taking the time. And as I say, I look forward to hearing how you get on.
Thanks so much, Madeleine.
Okay.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.